In this video, you're going to learn how to build out a settings area for user profiles in your Bubble application. This can be a staple feature for many Bubble apps because most apps have user accounts. So you want to give your users a way to configure those accounts and even decide what might show up on a public profile within the app. So follow along. We're going to go step by step through a lot of common features that you might find in user profiles. We'll of course look at the data structure, the design approaches, and the workflows. I'm first going to go through an overview of all of the pages that we have in our demo app. Our primary page is our settings page. That's where the bulk of the work is because that's where all of the setup is going to happen for the user. But we do have a couple of extra pages here so that you can see kind of as a baseline what you can do once you have those user profile details organized. So right now we're actually looking at the index page of our demo app so that we can have a little mini directory here. Now this is again really just demonstration so that we can get to multiple user profiles. But this can be built out in a different way. You could have a search feature. It could be restricted to logged in users only, maybe users with specific permissions. It's completely up to you. You may not even need a directory. You may be referencing users throughout other features of your app. For our purposes, we're going to have this quick list here so that I can easily switch between different users. Notice I have the photo, the user's name, as well as this icon here. You'll see this in the upper right corner as well to indicate whether the user is available or not. This can be for multiple use cases, for messaging, for hiring, right? They're available for work if this was like a marketplace. It's completely up to you. You'll see that we have a handful of features throughout all of the settings for different use cases so that you can understand, what it takes to save the information you need to a user record and then be able to display it however you'd like in your design. So let's go into Phoebe's profile. This is going to take us to our profile page. Notice that there is a slug in the URL. It says Phoebe here. This was customized to fit this user. We're not seeing just a unique ID. It makes it easier to share, for example. So this is, again, just a little demo of how you can display information about that user profile. So this is kind of a starting point here, but we've got the photo, the name, again, available now. I'm actually logged in as Phoebe right now. So if I turn my availability off, which is what this icon up in the upper right corner is doing, you can see that this changes. So if anybody else were to visit my profile, they would see my availability here. I've got a bio, my social links. So for example, if I click on the Instagram, it'll take me to that particular page. And we have, a seller since detailed date from when this user signed up to the application. Again, the example here is, let's say that they're a seller in a marketplace. All right. So if I go back to the directory and let's go to Chandler's, I'm going to the same page, but we're referencing a different user record. Notice the slug is different. Obviously, we have different information here. Okay. Now we're going to go into the settings. Now this is really where the bulk of the work is and really the bulk of this tutorial, which is the user is going to be able to manage all of their details for their profile, whether it's public facing or not, across these multiple tabs. This is something that we see come up all the time is, for user accounts, user profiles and settings can be a lot of information. And so organizing it in a clean way, such as these tabs here, can make it a lot easier to set up from the user's perspective, a lot easier for you to manage from the developer side of things. And so this is what we're going to step through. So this page has 6 tabs. The first one is for login details and be able to change their password and email address. Then we go into the personal details, which may not always be public facing, but could be helpful for any admin details for the application, verification, things like that. So you can see name, we've got the username, which is what we use for the slug. You'll also notice that we have some tooltips that we'll reference. We can also mark things as required. We'll be walking through all of those little features that are, very common for profile settings. And then we have a separate tab specifically for the photo. Okay, they can clear their photo. We've got some instructions here. They can upload a new one and replace it if they want. We've got a bio with a character counter. Okay, so you can limit them so that they have short biographies. We have an area for those social network handles, and this is dynamic. I'll show you in the data structure how you can offer specific social networks so that they can put in their usernames if they have them. And then we have a tab for notifications. So again, our example just has email notifications, but you can build this out even further if you want to do text message notifications notifications or in-app notifications. The idea here is that the user is setting up their preferences. Okay, so that's what this entire tutorial is about, is how do we get the user to save all of their preferences and all of their settings for whatever app this is going to be added to. Okay, then we also have this more options window here where you can reveal copying the URL of their profile. So if I paste this here, it takes me right to that generated URL for the user who's logged in. We can also just open it up in a separate tab, make it a nice little shortcut for the user there. And finally, we can also delete the profile. We've got a confirmation screen so that they have to, check this box, read this message before it deletes everything associated with that user profile. All right, now that we have an overview of what we're going to be building out, we're going to start with understanding the page structure and navigation systems to help move the user between all of these screens. All right, so we're in the editor here, and I'm first going to take you through the page structure setup for our demonstration. So we've obviously got our built-in index page, and this is where I've designed the little mini directory so we can go to all the other users' profiles. We have a custom profile page, a custom settings page, and a reusable element, which I've called header. That way this grouping of elements appears at the top of all of our screens so we can have a global navigation to get to our other pages here. Now, when the user clicks on the directory button, okay, we'll go to this workflow here. It's going to trigger very simple go to page action to take us back to the index wherever we are. Same thing for the settings button. When we click on this, we're going to do a go to page action to go to the settings page. On the header, the only other thing we have going on here is this icon so that the user can toggle on and off their availability. So I'm going to briefly go over here to our data structure. Under the user data type, you'll see we have an available field, which is a yes or no value. And so when the user clicks on that icon, we've actually got two workflows here to basically toggle that value from yes to no or from no to yes. So here when it's clicked and we've got a condition at the event level, when the current user's availability is no, then we're going to make a change to the current user, change it to yes. And then we have the opposite over here. When the current user's availability is yes, then we'll make a change to the user, change it to no. And so we get this effect here. And we're also using a condition to change the appearance of the icon, right? When I click on this, it just goes back and forth, switching that value. And we'll also take a look at the condition real quick over here on the icon. So by default, it's this little moon icon. And then when the current user's availability is yes, we'll change it to the sun icon and change the color as well. So that's all that's happening with the header, and you'll see that on all of our pages, we have an instance of that header so that the user can access it no matter where they are, right? Here's the profile page, same reusable element. That way, if we ever want to make a change, it reflects everywhere for us. We don't have to duplicate our work. So now I'm going to show you the navigation system from the directory to a specific profile page for any given user here. So on our index page, we have this repeating group. Okay, and this is going to search through all of our users in the system. I've kept this very basic. As you can see, I don't have any constraints, but you can certainly build this out further with search features, filters, things like that. Inside of this repeating group, I have another group just to help me with some spacing. This is referencing the current cells user, right? Because we're inside of the repeating group. And I'm displaying the user's photo, their first name and last name, and also the availability icon here. Notice that in the condition with this icon, we're referencing the parent group's user. So again, it's the repeating group rows user. It's not the current user anymore. Current user is just here in the header in the upper right corner. So when the parent group's user available is yes, we'll change that icon and the color. Right, so now when the user clicks on the view button, okay, we're going to trigger a go to page action to take the user to the profile page, and we're going to send data to that page. We're going to send the parent group's user. Now this works because this page is set up as a dynamic page. So I'm going to jump over to the profile page. I'm going to open up the property editor here at the page level. So notice that the type of content is set to user. This tells Bubble that it needs to receive a user record so that you can display information about that user in your design. Because we have the type of content set, that navigation action back on the index page over here, this field here is required. If I remove this expression, you'll see that it's going to throw an issue. Okay, so I'll undo that. Okay, so that setting at the profile page level is very important so that you can have a very quick shortcut to reference a specific user. So that's why when we go to our index here, I'll show you in the preview again. When I click on view button for Phoebe, which happens to be the user I'm logged in as, so I'm looking at my own profile, we go to the profile page and we're referencing Phoebe in the URL. If I go back and go to Monica, All right, we're still going to the same page, and it looks like Monica hasn't set up her slug yet, so it's going to default to the unique ID of that user. Okay, but it's the exact same page, same design and everything, but it's pulling different information from different users because we've sent specific user records from that navigation action. All right, so a couple other things that I want to mention here with the dynamic structure on the profile page is with a dynamic page, you want to make sure that any references to that dynamic record is going to the current page user, right? Current page user's first name, current page user's last name, or current page user's photo. You want to be very careful not to mix this up with the current user. The current user is simply the person who's interacting with the page, right? If I'm logging in and I'm moving through different screens, I'm the current user. The current page user is simply the dynamic user record that is being referenced in this profile page. Now, I may look at my own profile page. In that case, the current user happens to be the same as the current page's user. Okay, but most of the time, it's not going to be the same. If I'm looking at anybody else, they're not going to be equal. So make sure that you are referencing the right expression here when you're putting your design together in your dynamic profile page. Now I'll show you an example of where we are taking this into account is on this connect button. So this is a sample of, most public facing profile pages, especially with marketplaces or anywhere you want to connect people, you're going to have some sort of an action button to get them connected. Maybe it's to request a friend connection or send a message, something like that, send them a quote. And so we have this button here to simulate that. And by default, it says connect, right? So if I'm looking at somebody else's profile, I want to connect with them. But in the condition, if the current user is the current page user, right? If it's the same record, so I'm looking at my own profile, then it doesn't really make sense for me to have a connect button, sort of a waste of a button. I don't need to send myself a message. So instead, I'm going to repurpose this button, have it do something else in this scenario only. So the label will change to say edit. So if we look at our workflow here for this button, I'm going to go over to this one here. When this is clicked, and only when the current user is the same as the current page user, then we're going to take them to the settings page. So we've just created a shortcut for the user so that they can edit their own profile. Versus over here, if the current user is not the current page user, well, then you would run whatever actions you need to actually trigger that connection. So again, maybe take them to an inbox or take them to a quotation form that they need to fill out, whatever it might be. All right. So that's what you need to know there for the dynamic page structure. All right, so now we're going to look at the navigation system for the settings page, which is a little bit more involved. So I have my primary group here first. This is my group main. On this group, I have a custom state called tab, and this is pointing to an option set that I have called OS for option set, OS profile sections. Okay, OS profile sections, and I'm defaulting this to one of the options within this option set called login. You'll see that I have all of these choices here. So within the data tab under the option sets tab, I've set up a new option set called OS profile sections, and I've created all of these choices. So these are all of the sections there. So whatever you want your settings page to look like, you can follow this same approach and create a new option for each. So I like to do it this way because it makes it really clear when I'm setting up my expressions, conditions for visibility, and moving between the different sections. I know exactly which group is going to be shown because I have the clear label for it, and I don't have to type it out every single time, so I know it's going to be consistent. Okay, other people like to use just straight numbers or plain text for custom state navigation. That's perfectly fine too. You just need to make sure that you stay organized and you're consistent with it. Okay, so this is my custom state. So this state is what will help us determine which of our inner groups are visible or not. So for example, here's my login group. Let me move this over here. The login group by default, if we go to the layout tab, is not visible on page load. That's actually true for all of these subgroups here. Not visible on page load. We are going to collapse when hidden. This is a default setting that is enabled for you when you add new groups to the page, so you don't need to turn that off. But this setting here is also enabled by default. You will want to turn that off to create the same system. The condition is what will make it visible. So my condition is when my group mains tab, that's my custom state, is login. Okay, so I can just choose here, which is why I made this an option set custom state. It makes it really easy to just select rather than to type it in. When it's login, then this will be visible. If we go to the personal group, right, the first name, username, all those details, same condition but different value. When the tab is personal, then this is visible. Okay, so what changes the custom state? Well, remember that with group main, the custom state has a default, so it'll always start on the login screen. But then when we want to move to something else, I have this kind of mini navigation system up at the top. Okay, so right now you're seeing just this one tab button. If I go over to my settings preview here, you'll see that there's multiples. So what's happening here is that this is actually a repeating group. So I've designed this very dynamically so that you can, add, remove sections easily just by going to the option set, and it will kind of automatically reflect. It'll already be hooked up with the navigation logic and showing and hiding your different groups. All you need to do is really just update the condition for any new group that you want to add. But the navigation tabs at the top are going to generate automatically from those option set choices. So this repeating group here, it's a list, it's all of my profile sections. Okay, so if you set the type of content to your option set, you'll have this choice here for all and then whatever the name of your option set is. So that's what I've selected there. And this is just a repeating group with one row, dynamic number of columns, and I've set it up so that, the tabs are pretty narrow. They don't, they're as wide as they need to be to fit the label inside of them. So here I have my button to display the profiles display, the profile sections display. That's the option sets label. And then we have some conditions based on, the tab that we're currently on. We'll change the background color and the font color so that it's very clear which tab we're looking at. So for example, if the group mains tab is whatever this cells section is, right, because they're the same value. This is the option set. This is also the option set. Then we'll change that color. So clicking on this button is what will update the custom state to a different value. So I'll go to the workflow here. Okay, when tab is clicked, we will set the state of group main tab over to the current cells section. That's how we get that dynamic system. And so this has a ripple effect. The custom state value changes, therefore the visibility conditions kick on or off for the different groups. Whichever ones match this, that's the group that will display. Okay, so there's our navigation system for our settings page and, to move between all of those different subgroups. All right, now let's look at the database structure so that you can see how we're organizing all of the fields to collect all of the user information. Keep in mind that your app may need to organize data a little bit differently. You may have more data types. You may have more relationships between records. That's okay. Use this as a starting point. So within the user data type, here we have that available field, which is that yes or no value. Bio, plain text, birth date, plain date. This enable notifications field, this is a list of notification types. So this is another option set that I've created over here. So again, just examples, but if you want to send email notifications, in-app notifications, whatever it is, create the choices for the possible types of notifications, and then this field will reference that list of those option set choices, and whatever the user enables or disables in the design is just going to be added or removed from this list, and that way we know what this specific user wants to receive. Okay. Then we have plain text fields for first name, last name, and the phone number. I do encourage you to use text for phone numbers rather than numbers. Numbers are typically reserved for things you would do math with. Phone numbers can often have a lot of special characters, so text is the best format for that. We have a photo, which is just an image value for the user, and then social accounts. So we've actually split this off into a separate data type. So you can see here for the user, it's a list of social media accounts, which means it's a list of these records here. So for every social media account record, this is a one-to-one relationship between a user and a specific social network, so that we can have the username for that network for that user. Social network is also another option set. It's our third option set here. And so I've just created a few. Now with this setup here, I've also added a custom attribute called domain. This is just a text, but all option sets will have the built-in display, which is just your label for the choice. But I'm going to open up modify attributes here because I want the user to be able to click on the social icon link and navigate to that user's profile on whatever social platform. I do want to have sort of that base domain of that network so we can just slot in the username afterwards and just make it a very dynamic experience and make it more convenient for the user. So each one of these networks, I've added those base domains for them so that we can very easily create that URL. Okay, so again, under the social media network, we have a relationship to one of those social networks. This is not a list here. one user, one username, but the user may have more than one social accounts overall, and so we've got that list field set up here. So obviously, this is really just a demonstration of what you could have as part of a user profile. Your app is going to dictate what you need to save. So if you need to split things out into different data types, do that. Create whatever fields you need with the appropriate formats so that you can capture that information from the user, whether it's going to be public facing or not. And you'll get a better idea of what you may or may not need here within your data structure as we move through the design and workflow portion of this demo application next. Okay, real quick here. If you're finding this helpful, we have so much more to teach you in our free extended workshop over at coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop, where we'll guide you through our 4-phased approach for going from idea to app. So if you're looking for a start to finish guide, go ahead and register for it when you're done with this video, and you'll get immediate access to the training. I've got the link in the description below and on the screen right now. For now, let's head back to our lesson. All right, so let's take a look at the first section here. These are the login details where the user can update their credentials. We've got 4 inputs in this group: old password, email, new password, and confirm new password. So the user can choose whether they want to update just their password or just their email or maybe both. No matter what, they'll have to provide their current password or their old password. So we've got a little required text to let them know that. And of course, a user account can't exist without an email address. So we want to make sure that that's required as well. We're going to pre-populate it with whatever is currently saved to the user record here by default. Okay, so jumping into the design canvas, this is our login group. Remember that by default, this group is hidden, right? This setting is turned off, and then in the condition, it's visible when the custom state is set to login. Okay, so for all of the password inputs, the old, new, and confirm new, you'll see that the content format is set to password, and then the email address input is set to email. For this input as well, you can see there's our initial content. This is what pre-populates it with the current user's email. And then for the old password and the email address input, we have also set the "this input should not be empty" setting. This is enabled here. So this makes these inputs required. So if you trigger a workflow that references those inputs and they're left empty, the workflow actually won't go through. Those inputs would be seen as valid. So we're going to take advantage of those settings there. Right. So jumping into the workflow for, this save button, which I've called save login, you'll see that I have a separate save button for all of the sub tabs on this page, just to make it a lot easier to manage. Okay. When this is clicked, we're going to do a few things here. And just actually real quick here on the left-hand side, you can see how I've organized all my workflows into separate folders for each of the subsections. This way it can, it's a lot easier to manage, especially if this page gets built out with a lot more complexity. Creating a separate folder for each of your groups can make it easy for you to find things. So when this button is clicked, we're going to run the update user credentials action. I've got 2 of these because I want to split them up. One for if they're changing their email, and then the second one if they're changing their password. You can actually update the name of these as well. So I can say update email like this, and this one will be update password. Okay, so it makes it really easy for you to understand what each action is doing. But they are the same action. If you go to account here, we're talking about the, where is it? Over here, update the user's credentials. It's the same action. So the first one, you see the condition here. If the input email's value is not the current user's email, then we know that they've typed something in different than what's saved to the database. So that indicates they want to change their email. So we've got to provide the old password. We'll say to Bubble that we want to change the email with this action. We'll insert the new email address. And I'm also not going to show the system default success message. I'm actually going to show a custom alert message in a later step here. So I'm checking this box here. And then in the second step, doing a very similar thing, but for the password. Now for this one, because we can't access a user's password, all I really need to know is if there is a value in the new password input, right? The only reason somebody would type something in here is if they want to change their password. So as long as this is not empty, then we know that they want to change their password. So we'll provide the old password. We'll tell Bubble that that's what we want to change. We'll provide the new password. We also want to provide a confirmation. I do recommend that you do the confirmation. It reduces errors here. And make sure that you insert the right inputs. Make sure that all of your inputs are labeled very clearly, because it can be easy to cross wires if you have names that are copies of one another, things like that. In this third step here, we have our custom alert message. I'm going to show you what this looks like. This is an alert element, and I've got this positioned at the top of the page. I'm actually going to be triggering this alert across all of our subgroups here. So this is a shared alert message. You can also customize this in the action itself if you want to change, for any specific flow if you'd like. And then I'm going to reset the group. So this will just take all of the inputs back to their default state, which for this particular group means that, once I type things in and I hit save, it clears out the inputs that I don't need to, keep filled in. It'll just leave the email address there. All right, so now we're going to look at the personal details section. So we've got a couple of straightforward text inputs for the first name, last name, username. We will be taking advantage of Bubble's slug feature for the username. We've also got a date and time picker for the birth date, and a plugin that we're using to display this international phone number. This is really convenient if you're working with phone numbers all over the world. If you don't have to use this, of course, you can use a regular input if you're just working within one country or you don't care to have the country codes or anything like that. But I'll point out what plugin we're using for that. And we also have some tooltips here. Okay, so kind of sprinkling in just a few different features in each of these groups so that you can get a little bit of everything, a little bit of what we commonly see within profile setups. Okay, so jumping into the design canvas here. So this is our second group. We've called it group personal. And again, by default, not visible, right? This is turned off. And in the condition, this is visible when the tab is personal. That's our custom state. Okay, so looking at our inputs here, first name and last name and username are all set to content format text. Be mindful that you want to fill in those initial contents or those default values so that it can pre-populate with whatever is currently saved to the database. So there's the current user's first name, current user's last name. Here we're inserting the current user's slug. So jumping over to the data structure real quick, you'll see that every single data type, even your custom data types, have this built-in field called slug. So this holds some special properties, special capabilities where Bubble won't allow any duplicate slugs for multiple records within the same data type. So in other words, no two users can have the exact same slug. They have to be completely unique. And Bubble has some helpful states and things that you can use to check to see if what the user wants to change it to is going to be duplicate or not. We'll go through that in just a second here, but this is going to be helpful for the username that we can then display in the profile page URL, and if they want to share the link, it's very convenient for that. Okay, so here we're using the native Bubble element for date and time picker, so you can just search date time picker. That's what we've got there. We're also setting the initial content to the current user's birth date. That's one of the date fields in the user data type. Notice that this one is also set to should not be empty, just for a little bit of variety here with our demonstration. And for anything that we have required, we've just added this text here that says required in red. And then here is our international phone input. So again, you'll search for, let me see, let's do international like this, international phone input, that's the element. You've got a few different settings to customize the look and feel of it. The important thing here for the default value, again, just pull from the user's record, current user's phone. You also have some options on, which countries you want to include in the list, exclude, pin to the top, things like that. So I encourage you to explore the settings there. Now, for the tooltips, you'll see that I've added this icon, this little info icon next to everything that, I want to provide a tooltip for. These icons have an ID attribute set to them. Okay, so if you scroll to the bottom of the property editor of that icon, you can see right here for the username icon, I've set the ID attribute to username. For birth date, I've set it to B-day. For phone number, what did I do here? P number. Okay, so I'm just making up these IDs. They don't need to be anything specific, but you do need to provide an ID here. Now, if you don't see this, this input in your property editor, head over to your settings, then go to the General tab. You'll scroll down, let's see, it should be at the bottom of the screen right here, the very last setting under Advanced Options, expose the option to add an ID attribute. So you want to check that box over here on the right. That will enable that setting at the bottom of the property editor for all of your visual elements. Okay, so why do we need to do this? Well, the ID is how the plugin for the tooltip is going to communicate with that icon, and it knows what the trigger element is to show the tooltip. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll add an Air Tooltip element. So again, this is from our Air Tooltip plugin. So if you search for Air Tooltip, right, this is the visual element here. And I've got one for each tooltip. If you scroll to the top of this property editor here for the plugin, Trigger Elements ID. Notice what I've set here, right? This is username. That matches the ID of this icon. So that's how this plugin element is going to communicate with the icon. And you can set up the tooltip through all of these settings here. You can get really customized. So what I've done for this particular thing is I've provided a title as well as a dynamic piece of content. So this says this is part of your public profile URL, and the content is a generated link for the user's profile. So just to show you again what that looks like here, right? If I hover over, it's going to show that title in that top part of the tooltip and then that generated link in the bottom part. Okay, you don't have to have a title if you don't want. You can leave that blank, that's optional. But again, I do encourage you to explore all the settings here. And just to point out here, the show event that I've used is mouse enter. So I'm just hovering over it, but you can change it to a click if you want. Okay, now I do want to explain this expression here real quick. So whenever you have a reference to a specific record of any data type, doesn't have to be user, you will have access. Let me back out of this real quick here so I can show you. You'll have access to this value here, link. This is a built-in property. It's not a custom field. So if I go to link, Bubble's going to ask me, all right, which page do you want to generate a link for this thing that we are referencing, in this case, the current user? Well, I only have one page where the type of content is set to user. That's the profile page. So it's only going to offer me what's available. Okay, and so what this ends up creating is the full URL to the profile page automatically with the reference to that user. If they've got a slug, it will default to the slug. If they don't have a slug, it'll fall back on the unique ID for the user. Okay, so this is a really helpful shortcut to quickly create a dynamic URL to a dynamic page for the user. Okay, so that is the tooltip there, and you'll see the pattern here for the birth date. I'm identifying the target element by the ID. I have a title there. I have content here. Same thing for the phone number. Notice that this one doesn't have a title. It's just got content, and it just, it just has that white block there. But you can change the coloring and everything. So a lot of customization options. So now let's take a look at the workflows here. So the save button is going to open up our personal folder. We have two workflows here. Actually, yeah, there is a discard button that is hidden right now because this is only going to show up when we have made changes to any of the inputs. Let me actually go through that one first here. So by default, this button is hidden, and in the condition, you can see we've got a big expression here to make this visible. Now, this may not be practical for you depending on how much you have going on one single screen, or it may encourage you to break up your forms into smaller groupings, more tabs where there's less to see at once. But what I'm doing here is intentionally checking for changes that have been made. And before we commit those changes, right, changes to the inputs, before we commit those changes, we'll offer the user the ability to discard and reset the group back to its default state to essentially whatever is currently in the database. So for example, I'm going to change Phoebe's name. I'm just kind of typing in some letters here, typing in letters here. You see the button popped up. And so when I click on this, it resets it. It doesn't save anything, and it never saved anything even when I typed it in because I needed to hit the save button in order to do that. But it just resets the group to take the inputs back to their default state, which is their initial contents. So the expression is just checking, it's comparing every single one of these. So for example, if the current user's first name is not the input first name value, or if the current user's last name is not the input last name's value. And I've done that with all of the inputs here to check against the counterpart in the database. So if one of those is not matching, then we know we've made at least one change. And the workflow for this button is simply going to reset that group. That's all that needs to happen to bring it back to what it was before. Okay. So now let's look at the save button here. So the first action is going to save the birth date, just map these fields, the first name, last name, and the phone number, right, from all of our inputs there. You see that make a change to the current user. Second thing is going to set the slug. This is a dedicated action here. You can find this under data and here set a things slug. Okay, so the thing to change is the current user in this case, and the slug is going to be whatever is in the inputs value. Now we only want to do this if the value that they've typed in is available as a slug. Otherwise, Bubble is just going to add a number to it if it's already been taken. Okay, so the condition here is current user slug is not the input slug's value, right? So we've detected a change there. And the current user can have the slug value of whatever is in that input. This is actually a full conditional check that Bubble has when you're going off of a record, right? So current user can have the slug value. This is going to give you a yes or a no. And in this case, we're checking against the input. So if we have detected a change and the value is available, then this condition will pass and it will change the slug for the user. Now this expression can have the slug value. I've actually got this set up here as well in a hidden text over here, right? This slug availability. I've got the exact same thing. Current user can have the slug value, input slug's value, and because this is giving me a yes or no, I'm reformatting that yes or no as a text to make it super clear to the user. the username is available versus the username is not available. Okay, and in the condition, I'm just changing the colors. So if it cannot have the slug value, that's an alternate one that you can go with, then I change it to red. If we've detected a change here, then we'll make this text visible. If they're not changing anything, then they don't really need to see this text. So by default, this is hidden. So I'm going to show you actually here with Monica's profile. I believe that hers has not been set yet. So let's run as Monica. Okay, and we're going to go to the personal tab here. You can see the username is empty, so I'm going to type in just her first name, Monica, and you can see username is available. Now, if I wanted to change my slug to Phoebe, which I know is already taken by the Phoebe record, you can see here this has found that, hey, that's already taken. This would end up being a duplicate, so this one's not available. Okay, so if I go back to one that is, then we see that condition change there. Okay, so that's what's happening there. So going back to the workflow, the next action is to show our alert message again. That was the same one as before. And we're also going to go ahead and reset the group so that they can now see what has been committed to the database. All right, so we're in the photo tab now. So there's several things that you can do here. You can upload a photo for the first time. You can replace an existing photo. You can clear out a photo. You can also discard changes. So we're going to step through each of these functions. So from the perspective of a brand new user, they're going to see this placeholder here first. So I'm going to click on this file uploader, and I am using file uploader instead of the picture uploader because with the file uploader I can set a limit to the size, and that'll ensure that my pages load fast, especially on the directory page if I'm going to show multiple users at once, with their pictures. I don't want really large files to slow down those pages. So I'm going to go ahead and click to open up my file manager. Okay, I've selected a photo and it's uploaded this here. Now I have a preview of this. So I haven't yet committed this change to the database. So I still have the opportunity to discard. Now I want you to see something here real quick before I do anything. I'm going to go to the data tab, go to the file manager tab, and you'll see here that this photo was uploaded to the application. It has not yet been saved to Monica's record. I'm still logged in as Monica here. So you'll see that this is empty, but it has been uploaded to the application. Now, if I discard changes, okay, we go back to the state that we were in. If I go back to the file manager and hit search to sort of refresh, you can see that it goes away. So we're ensuring that we clear things out that we don't want to keep so it doesn't take up space in your file manager. All right, so I'm going to upload a new photo now. Okay, so I've got a new photo here. I'm going to go ahead and save. Okay, and so now I have the ability to clear the photo away from the, from the application as a whole. So at the moment, let's refresh here. We can see there's that new photo. If I go to Monica's record, I can see that it has also been saved to the record. Okay, so if I go back into the preview and I say clear photo, it's going to completely remove it both from Monica's record. Okay, it's gone there, as well as from the file manager. I've just got to refresh this here. There we go, and it's gone. All right, so now coming into the design canvas, we do have several elements that are conditionally visible. So the discard changes button is one of them. When the file uploader's value is not empty, that's when we'll show the discard changes, right? That's the only time we want to discard is if they've actually uploaded something. So here's my file uploader. Again, it's not the picture uploader. Here's where I can put my instruction text, and I can also limit the file size. Okay, now over on the left, I have a conditional element that will only display if the user's photo is empty and the file uploader's value is empty. So only when both of those things are true will I display this placeholder icon here. This is an icon. You can of course use another placeholder image or whatever you want to indicate that there is no photo yet for the user. Now on the right, I have this group here that has an image element as well as this clear photo button down below it. So the image element is going to, by default, show the current user's photo, okay, whatever's saved to the database. And in the condition, there's two scenarios in which this will show. The first is if the user's photo is not empty, right? We have something in the user record. Or if the file uploader's value is not empty, we will also show this and we'll change that default value to the file uploader's value. This is a way for us to show a preview of what they've uploaded to the file uploader. All right. Now the clear photo button is only going to be visible if we have a photo saved to the user record and there is nothing in the file uploader. So we only want to see clear photo if we're looking at a user profile that has a picture already and we haven't manipulated anything. Okay, so let's go through the workflow here for clear photo. Right, so the remove photo button or clear photo, when this is clicked, this is going to delete an uploaded file. So you can find this under data and then delete an uploaded file. So here's where I'll reference the file URL for the current user's photos URL. This is built in. When you reference file fields, the URL, file name, those are both built-in states. Okay, so that will remove the file from the file manager in your application. I'm also going to go ahead and make a change to the current user and clear out the photo field. Technically, you don't need this step, but I found that this creates a lot more consistency after deleting a file for it to immediately disappear from the user. All right, so I do like to follow the deletion with that action. All right, the discard is going to do a very similar thing here. We're going to delete the uploaded file from the file uploader, right? Because the discard is just, basically backtracking on any changes but that have not yet been committed to the database. And then we're going to reset the group so that all of the elements go back to their default state. Okay, the save button, again, a dedicated save button here for this group. This is going to do a few things. We're going to delete any photo that has already been uploaded to the user. This is to address a change in photos. So if they have one already, but they want to replace it with something else, we need to delete what was previously there. We don't want that picture hanging around in the file manager. So as long as we can see that there is a value in the file uploader, we can go ahead with deleting with whatever is currently there, because we know that we're about to replace it with something else. Okay, so we're going to remove the existing photo value, and then we're going to update the user with the new photo value, right, from the file uploader, again, as long as that's not empty. Then I'll show my alert message, and I'll also reset the group. Okay, so these three buttons will handle all scenarios around managing the picture. All right, so for the bio tab, we've got a multi-line input for the user to type in their biography. We've also got a character counter. There are some plugins for this sort of thing here, but I'm going to show you how to do it with native Bubble capabilities. So I can just type in, this is my bio, like this. And if I click out, Bubble will kind of recognize that there's a change there, and it'll update this value here. So I've got 15 characters, and I'm going to paste in real quick a just kind of a duplication of this sentence here. So you can see as I get closer to the limit, I've changed the color of the character counter, and eventually, there we go, it cuts me off. You see, now I can't actually type beyond this because I've reached that limit here. All right, so let's jump into the design canvas. So this is just a regular multi-line input. There's our initial content for the current user's bio, and here I am limiting the number of characters to 300. And down below, I am in a text element displaying the multi-line inputs value number of characters. That's a built-in operation that you can access. And then I've just typed in out of 300. So I know what my max is from the setting in the multi-line input, so that's what I've typed in. And in the condition, I've got it set up so that if the number of characters is over 275, then we're going to change the color just to give the user a little visual cue that they're nearing their limit. Okay, so that's all you need to do for the character counter. So discard changes, let's go to the workflow. Should be very simple. It's just going to reset the group. That's all it does. So it takes that input back to its default state. Okay, and then for our save button should also be very, very simple. We're going to make a change to the user and update that bio field to the multi-line input and then show our alert message. That's it. Okay, so for the social group, this has a different setup here. We've got a repeating group to dynamically work with however many social networks the user wants to add. So I'm going to add social. This will add one row to our repeating group. I'll select from my list of possible networks, we'll say Facebook, and then I can type in my handle. So I'm just going to say Monica, that's who I'm logged in as. I can add a second one and then select that network. I'll say Monica G, something like that, right? If I add a third one, I change my mind, I can hit delete here and it'll get rid of it. Okay, so let's jump into the design canvas. So this is a repeating group of social media accounts, and the data source is the current user's social accounts, right? There's that list field on the user data type. When we click on Add Social, we're going to immediately create the record, okay, before even knowing what network or what the username is. So that way it adds it to the repeating group immediately, and they can just kind of edit it in line there. So when this button is clicked, we're going to create a new social media account record. Related user is the current user. That's all we know about this so far. And we're going to modify the current user to add that new record, right, the result of step one, to the current user's list of social accounts. Okay, this field is the data source for the repeating group. As soon as they click the button, it will add it there. This drop down, so this is now inside of the repeating group here. We've got this group element. I've actually got multiple groups here to help with spacing and everything, but they're all referencing the cell's social media account. Okay, so the drop down is just pulling from my option set of social networks. I'm going to display all of them. There's the display field to show the name of the network. And I actually have this set to auto binding. Okay, so notice that I don't have a save button in the upper right. This was just to add a social network account. So to modify the selection and actually save that value to the record, and same thing for this input for the username, see how I have auto binding selected. We do have to have a privacy rule enabled to allow auto binding. Auto binding is like an auto save, so you don't have to trigger a workflow. It will just immediately bind itself to whatever field you select in this dropdown. So the input will bind the username field and the dropdown will bind to the network field. Okay, so you want to make sure you go over to your data tab, then privacy, and then here under the social media account, I've got a privacy rule set up for the owner of that social account. So if this social media account's related user is the current user, right? So I'm looking at my own record, then not only can I see all of the fields and find it in searches, but I'm also going to allow auto binding to those two fields. Now notice that the default permission is allowing access to the social networks because these are going to be displayed and the links are going to be provided for users to click on those icons to go to those profiles. We don't want to hide them from anyone. We just don't want anyone to allow auto binding. We only want the owner of that social media account to allow auto binding. So in order for auto binding to work, you do have to have at least one privacy rule that gives access to auto binding to those fields. All right, so that's what's actually doing the saving of those selections. And then I have a delete icon here to just remove the record. So this will delete the social media account altogether. All right, now our notifications tab. It's also very simple. We have essentially a list here of all the possible notification types. So we're going to be pulling from our option set. And the user is just going to toggle these icons on and off to indicate which ones they want to receive. Okay, so let's jump into the editor here. So in the design, we have a repeating group of our notification types. That's the data source. That's our option set. Okay, so inside of that group, we are displaying the notification type display. And we have a condition to change the color to green. This is just a visual cue for the user if the current user has it enabled. So if the current user's enable notifications, that's the list of types on the user data type. If it contains the parent group's notification type, then we know that they've enabled it, right? And so we change the color here. The icon is going to trigger a workflow to basically add and remove, whatever direction that they're in, add and remove that type from this field. Okay, and so the default appearance of this toggle is the off position in a gray color, and then the condition, same expression as the text, but in addition to changing the color to green, we'll also change the icon so that it's in a toggle on position. So it's very clear to the user here. So let's go to the workflow for this icon. Okay, so you see that we have two of them here, one for enabling, one for disabling. So for this one, when it's clicked and the current user's enable notifications list field doesn't contain the parent group's type, then we're going to modify the user and add that type to the list. Versus the opposite here, when it's clicked and the list already contains the notification type, then we're going to modify the user and remove it from that list. Okay, now the idea here with this list is that you can then reference it whenever it's time to send a notification. So let's say that the user wants to be notified by email every time they receive an in-app message, if you have like an inbox feature set up. So whenever the message is created, you would trigger a send email notification only when the recipient has enabled notifications, or their enabled notifications list contains new message. If it doesn't contain it, then that means that they don't want to receive that email, so the condition would fail and it would skip over it. They wouldn't get that email. Okay, so this list here is to use as a reference in conditions in order to trigger those notification actions. And finally, we have our more options group here. This is going to show a group focus element so that it's kind of attached to this icon and text here. We've got just a couple more functions for the user so they can copy the URL to the clipboard. They can open up the profile in a separate tab here, write their own profile. And they can choose to delete the profile. This is going to take them to a confirmation pop-up first. So let's take a look at all of these functions here. So design-wise, you'll see that I have a group focus element. Group focus elements have to be sort of attached to another element. So I've got this, referencing the button that I've got here for more options. All right, you can also offset them so that they're, positioned a little bit below or more to the side. So you can add some more pixels there if you'd like. So my first function here is to copy the URL. This is actually triggering a third plugin that we're working with, our last plugin here, Copy to Clipboard, another free plugin. It's got just one action to work with, Copy to Clipboard. So when I click on this button, let me open up my group focus again. Oh, here it is. It's jumped over to the corner for a sec. All right, so when this is clicked, This is going to hide the group focus and then run that plugin action, copy to clipboard. I'm going to tell it exactly what to copy. In this case, it's that user's link. I showed you before how to generate the link to the profile. And I'm also going to show the alert message that I have, but I'm going to change the message to say copied instead of saved, right? Okay, so there's our copy function. Then we have our preview. Okay, going to go to this workflow here. This is going to, again, hide the group focus as a kind of, it's a way to sort of reset that area. And then we're going to go to the profile page in a separate tab. I've enabled this here, and notice the data to send here is now the current user, right? I'm wanting to preview my own profile. So I'm going to send my own user record as the data source for that profile page. Right, so there is that preview function. And then the delete profile, this is going to open up our pop-up. It'll hide the group focus and show our pop-up that we've called pop-up delete. Okay, so go back to the design and I will show you my delete pop-up here. All right, so we've got some text to let the user know what's going to happen when they delete, and we've also got a checkbox just to make sure that they take some sort of action to super confirm that this is what they want to do. I am going to default it to unchecked, right? And in order for the delete function to move forward, it has to be checked. So I've made this a required input here. So when they click on delete, all right, this is going to do several things. It's basically going to delete any record, any file that is associated with the user. So I'm going to delete all of the list of social media accounts tied to the user. This is, if you go to data, delete a list of things, that's the action that I'm using there. I'm going to delete the uploaded file for the user's photo. And then finally, I'll delete the user. So if you have other details, other records tied to the user, you want to make sure that you cover those here. I'm also going to go ahead and just log the user out, because if they don't exist, they should not be on this page anymore. You'll see that I do have a workflow, I believe it is over here. When the user is detected as being logged out, it's going to automatically navigate them, away from this page to the index page, or you could go to a login page, a sign up page for them to start over if you need. But basically we're kicking them out of this settings page that requires the user account to exist. And this back to settings button is simply going to hide the pop-up. This is more of a never mind, go back, I don't want to delete function. So it just takes them back to where they were. All right, I hope that was helpful. We've got more great lessons coming up for you on the next screen. And don't forget to register for that free extended workshop. The link for that is in the description below.